My husband's family mocked me for working as a cashier and said their son could do so much better. They didn't know I was secretly funding his startup. Years later, at a family meeting, when they called me useless again, he stood up and said, "Without her, none of us would have this house." Their smiles disappeared instantly. My name is Rachel. I'm 31 years old, and for most of my adult life, I've been judged, underestimated, and humiliated by the very people I tried the hardest to win over, my husband's family. But this is not a sob story. This is a story about quiet strength, unshakable love, and how karma sometimes shows up in the most poetic way. I met Jeremy when I was 24. He was 2 years older than me, this bright, ambitious guy with the wildest ideas and the softest heart. I was working as a cashier at a grocery store back then, just trying to make ends meet after dropping out of college to take care of my sick mom. Life hadn't exactly gone according to plan, but I never saw myself as a failure. I was responsible, hardworking, and fiercely independent. Jeremy saw that in me from day one. He used to come through my checkout line just to talk to me, buying one banana or a bottle of water just for an excuse. We started dating, and soon after, he opened up about his dream, building his own software company, something about simplifying back-end systems for small businesses. I didn't understand half of it, but I believed in him. And that belief became the foundation of everything that followed. Jeremy's parents, on the other hand, didn't believe in much of anything except their own egos. From the first day I met them, I could feel the chill. His mom, Lorraine, wore judgment like perfume, thick and suffocating. She took one look at my grocery store name tag and asked Jeremy if he was going through a charity phase. His dad, Leonard, didn't speak much to me directly, just offered tight-lipped smiles that said, "You won't last." And his sister, Vanessa? She laughed when Jeremy introduced me. Literally laughed, as if he just told a joke. They all thought he could do so much better. Whatever that means. I wish I could say I stood up for myself, but back then, I just smiled and bit my tongue. I didn't want to make Jeremy's life harder. He loved his family, even if they didn't deserve it. So I became invisible, polite, quiet, helpful when needed, and otherwise not worth noticing. What they didn't know was that I was also the person keeping Jeremy's dream alive. While they were mocking my low-level job, I was quietly funneling half my paycheck into his startup. We couldn't get investors at first. Jeremy had the vision, but no one wanted to take a risk on a guy with no connections, no capital, and no Ivy League degree. So I became the capital. I took extra shifts, skipped meals, walked instead of taking the bus. Every dollar I could save, I gave to him. We worked out of our tiny apartment, Jeremy coding day and night, me coming home with aching feet and sore hands but a full heart. 2 years went by like that. And then came the first big break. Jeremy landed a deal with a small chain of local retailers who loved his product. Word spread. Within 6 months, he had 5 more clients. A year after that, he had a team of 10 and his first real office space. We got married quietly at City Hall, no big wedding, no expensive dress. I wore a white blouse from Target and he wore the same suit he'd interviewed in back when he still believed in job applications. His family didn't come. They said they were too busy. What they meant was I wasn't worth celebrating. But the next twist came sooner than even I expected. About 6 months after our quiet wedding, Jeremy's startup got noticed by a mid-sized tech magazine. They ran a feature on scrappy entrepreneurs shaking up the business world, and his name was right there, front and center. Suddenly, the same investors who had ignored his emails were begging for meetings. He stayed grounded, though. That was one thing about him I always loved. No matter how big things got, he always made time for me, always credited me for standing by him when no one else did. But with that spotlight came something else. His family started calling again. Lorraine invited us for dinner, pretending nothing had ever happened. Leonard shook my hand like he didn't remember ever treating me like an unpaid intern at a country club. And Vanessa? She greeted me with a fake compliment about my shoes and then immediately asked if they were from a discount store. It was the same script, different setting. Only now, instead of acting like I wasn't good enough, they treated me like Jeremy's charity case. They didn't know I had been the one paying the bills in those early days. That without me, Jeremy would have had to shut it all down before he even got started. At dinner that night, Lorraine went on about how proud she was of her son. She actually used the phrase "our genius boy" while completely ignoring that I was even in the room. Every time Jeremy tried to shift some of the credit toward me, she waved it off and changed the topic. Leonard nodded in agreement, sipping his wine like a silent judge. And Vanessa? She scrolled through her phone, showing Jeremy photos of a girl she thought he would have looked good with. That was the moment I realized something twisted. They still didn't believe we were equals. Not in love, not in life, not in business. In their minds, Jeremy had built himself up despite me, not because of me. After that night, I stopped going to their house. I didn't forbid Jeremy from seeing them, but I didn't want to be part of the performance anymore. He understood. He always did. Things kept growing. Jeremy's company got acquired in a multi-million-dollar deal. He stayed on as CEO, and suddenly we weren't just comfortable, we were wealthy. We bought a house in the hills with a view that looked like a movie set. But I kept my life simple. I never changed my style, never bragged, and I definitely didn't invite Lorraine over for tea. And then came the real shocker. Jeremy told me he wanted to build something new. A bigger company, one that would give back to local communities and focus on helping women-led small businesses with digital tools. I loved the idea. But this time, I said I wanted to be involved, not behind the scenes, but in the room. I wasn't the cashier anymore. I had grown, learned, watched. I knew how to manage, how to budget, how to handle tough clients. I had earned my seat at the table. Jeremy agreed immediately. We became official co-founders. But when his family found out, they laughed again. This time it was worse. They called a family dinner, more like an ambush. Everyone was there. Vanessa was sipping on champagne before I even sat down. Lorraine opened with a toast, congratulating Jeremy for starting another genius project. Then she looked me dead in the eyes and said something I'll never forget. Some people just marry well, I guess. Must be nice not having to prove yourself. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because I knew what was coming next. That night, when Lorraine made that comment about how I must have married well, I just kept smiling. Not because I was weak, but because I had something they didn't, the truth. And that truth was a ticking bomb I was more than ready to let explode. I didn't say anything during dinner. I let them talk. Let them pretend. Let them float in their little fantasy world where their son was some self-made tech king and I was the lucky girl who stumbled into his castle. But I could see Jeremy's patience starting to wear thin. Every insult they threw at me didn't just land, it lit a fire under him. After dessert, Lorraine said something that finally crossed the line. She looked me in the eye and asked if I still worked with those grocery store girls or if I just stayed home looking pretty these days. She smirked, satisfied with herself, while Vanessa giggled into her wine glass. Jeremy pushed his plate aside and stood up. His voice didn't rise. He didn't shout. But his words hit the table like a hammer.
Without Rachel, none of us would even be in this house. Everyone froze. Lorraine blinked, confused. Leonard narrowed his eyes. Vanessa looked like someone just canceled her credit card. Jeremy kept going. He told them everything. How I funded his first company. How I worked nights, weekends, skipped meals, and paid for his software licenses, marketing, even the coffee they all enjoyed at the launch party they never showed up to. He told them how I helped draft his business plans, handled client calls when he was sick, and even stood up to a disgruntled investor once when he didn't have the strength to do it himself. He told them I didn't just support him. I built the damn foundation he stood on. And then came the part none of them expected. He told them that the new company we were building, it wasn't his. It was ours. 50-50. Every document, every decision, every investor pitch. And the house they were sitting in, I signed half the check for it. From money I earned, not just from the cashier job, but from smart investments I made once Jeremy taught me about finance. You should have seen their faces. Lorraine's smile vanished like smoke. Leonard sat there, stunned, like someone had unplugged his thoughts. Vanessa looked ready to cry. But that wasn't the twist. That wasn't even the punchline. The real twist came when Jeremy handed Lorraine a small envelope. She opened it, expecting something pleasant. It was a photo of our first apartment. The one with the cracked windows, secondhand furniture, and peeling paint. Taped to it was an old grocery store receipt. My name was still printed at the bottom. That's where it started, Jeremy said. Right there. That receipt is more valuable than any of your fake compliments. Nobody said a word. Lorraine got up, excused herself, and didn't come back. Leonard followed her without a word. Vanessa? She tried to act unbothered but left 5 minutes later, pretending she had another party to attend. The house was quiet again, just the way I liked it. But even that silence didn't last long. 2 weeks passed after that dinner. The silence from Jeremy's family wasn't just awkward, it was eerie. No calls, no messages, not even fake smiles on social media. Just total blackout. I figured they were licking their wounds and crafting a new story to make themselves the victims. I didn't care either way. I had no room left in my life for people who only clapped when they were center stage. Then one morning, out of nowhere, Lorraine called. She didn't ask how we were, didn't apologize. She just said they were hosting a full family meeting and wanted us to be there. She called it important. Jeremy didn't want to go. I told him we should. Not for them, but for us. I wanted to see what story they had cooked up now that their fake image was cracking. When we arrived, the house looked like it had been cleaned for a magazine shoot. Polished floors, fresh flowers, pastries on the table. Lorraine greeted us like nothing had ever happened. Leonard sat stiff on the couch, looking as emotionally available as a statue. Vanessa was already scrolling on her phone, pretending we were invisible. Lorraine started talking right away. She said the family had been going through a rough patch and needed to come together. Then, like a queen declaring war, she looked me in the eyes and said the words that reignited every ounce of fire I had buried for years. We just need to make sure Rachel knows her place in all this. It was casual, said with a smile, as if I was the confused employee and she was gently putting me back in my lane. Jeremy was about to speak, but I stopped him. I was done being silent. I told them that for years, I accepted their cruelty because I loved Jeremy. That I gave them the benefit of the doubt, believing that someday they'd see me as more than a grocery store girl. But now, I didn't need their approval. I didn't even want it. Because while they were busy living in their country club bubble, I was in the trenches building something real. I told them I had taken the same skills they laughed at and used them to build teams, negotiate contracts, and run a 6-figure department within our company. That their insults didn't break me. They sharpened me. And no one, not them, not anyone, would ever get to tell me my worth again. Then came the twist that really shook the room. I pulled out a stack of folders and handed one to each of them. Inside were property transfer documents. 3 months ago, Jeremy and I bought a second house, a lakefront villa we planned to rent out. But we had decided to gift that property to a community program for single mothers trying to re-enter the workforce. We didn't do it for praise. We did it because I had once been one of those women. Struggling, invisible, judged. And the donation was made in their family's name. The silence was different this time. Not awkward, not angry, just hollow. Lorraine finally spoke. She asked why I would give something so valuable to people I didn't even know. I looked her straight in the eye and said because I never forgot what it felt like to be told I was less. And then I left. Jeremy followed. We didn't look back. But life wasn't done surprising us just yet. A few months after the family meeting, Jeremy and I were invited to a gala hosted by a National Entrepreneurship Foundation. His company had been nominated for an award, and to our surprise, they insisted both of us attend. They knew the full story. They had heard it through mutual connections and saw the truth most people miss, that I wasn't just the wife in the background. I was a partner, a builder, a force. At the gala, they introduced us as co-founders. They spoke about our journey, how we had started with nothing but belief in each other, and how we had turned that belief into a company that now employed over 100 people. The crowd stood up, applauded, not just for Jeremy, but for both of us. And guess who was watching the live stream from home? Vanessa accidentally posted a screenshot of it on her story. She deleted it seconds later, but I saw it. So did thousands of her followers. That same night, Lorraine texted Jeremy. Just 4 words. We were wrong. Sorry. He didn't reply. That same week, Leonard sent us a legal document. He had transferred a small piece of family-owned property to Jeremy as a peace offering. We returned it through our lawyer, unsigned. We didn't need land. We had peace. But then came the last twist. The one that flipped the entire story on its head. A woman reached out to me through LinkedIn. She said she had worked with Lorraine years ago at a firm that handled private investments. She told me Lorraine had once applied for a silent investor position in a competing company, one that had tried to crush Jeremy's startup in its early days. The name had never appeared on any paperwork, but the timing lined up too well. Lorraine hadn't just doubted me. She had actively tried to sabotage Jeremy's future while pretending to support him in public. I didn't confront her. I didn't even tell Jeremy. I just smiled, because it finally made sense. All the fake support. The sudden silence. The weird energy at that family dinner. She hadn't just underestimated me. She feared me, not because of who I was, but because of what I might become. And now, I had become it. Today, I run 2 departments in our company. We employ dozens of women who were once counted out like I was. We train them, lift them, empower them. Jeremy and I are partners in every sense of the word. Not just in business. In life. And as for his family, they still exist. Somewhere. Out there. But in our story, they're no longer main characters. Just background noise that once tried to drown us out. Now, we speak louder. Together. And we never apologize for who we had to become to be heard. Sometimes, the people who doubt you the most are the ones who fear what you're truly capable of. Don't let anyone define your worth. Keep pushing, keep proving, and most importantly, believe in yourself when no one else does. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about how life's twists and turns shape us, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the journey. You don't want to miss the next chapter. Stay tuned and let's keep growing together.